हेलो एवरीवन, कैसे हैं आप सभी। वेलकम टू द चैनल। सो दिस इज गोइंग टू बी द फाइनल पार्ट ऑफ द स्पेक्ट्रम रिवीजन सीरीज थ्रू नोट्स. In this part we are going to cover the constitutional developments, in which we are going to discuss the administrative reforms taken by British India, the evolution of the civil services, the evolution of the police system in India. Then we will discuss the economic impact of the British rule, then the evolution of Indian press, and then finally we will study the topic of education. Now, इससे पहले I start the video, if you haven't watched the previous part, so you can watch them. I will give the link of the videos in the description of this video. Now, let us start with the year 1765, dual government of Bengal. But before starting this, let me give you a brief idea and brief information about the year 1765, which was an important year in the history of British India. Now, what happened in the year 1765? Two treaties were signed. Now, these treaties were signed by Robert Clive after 1764 Battle of Buxar, in which the British East India Company emerged victorious. Two treaties were signed. Two treaties were signed in this. These were the Treaty of Allahabad. The first one was signed with the Mughal Emperor of India, Alamgir II, and the second one was signed by the Nawab of Awadh, whose name was Shah Alam II. Now, after this, the dual government of in Bengal started. This was started by Robert Clive, as I have told you, and this system was ended by Warren Hastings. Now, after the Warren Hastings ended this dual government of Bengal, the Regulating Act of 1773 was there. Now, the most important point of this Regulating Act was Governor General of Bengal was made for the first time. Now, the first Governor General of Bengal was Warren Hastings. This you have to remember. This is the most important point in this. Other amendments or the other provisions in the Regulating Act of 1773 were it recognized the East India Company role in the political plus administration. Now, the main point here to understand that East India Company came to India as an economic company or a commercial company, which was mainly associated to trade. But after the Treaty of Allahabad was made, the Regulating Act affirmed the role of East India Company in political and administrative sphere as well. Now, this showed that the East India Company and the British India was going to expand politically also. Now, the role of East India Company, politically and administrative, beyond trading, their role was recognized. Second one was the director of East India Company to submit all information with respect to revenue and military to the government. They have to submit all the information. Now, in Bengal, there will be Governor General with 4 council members, and I have already told you, Governor General of Bengal of 1773 Act was Warren Hastings. Now, a Supreme Court in Bengal will be established. If the question asks when was the Supreme Court was established for the first time, your answer will be it was established by the Regulating Act of 1773. Now, Governor General were given powers over Bombay and Madras. Now, the Act of 1773 had some shortcomings. These were amended by the Act of 1781. So, what were the provisions? The provisions were Supreme Court jurisdiction was within Calcutta. Now, the earlier Act of 1773, the jurisdiction of Supreme Court was very vaguely given. Now, the 1781 Act, jurisdiction confined, the Supreme Court jurisdiction was confined within Calcutta. Second provision was the government servants were immune to anything done during their discharge of duties, and this would emerge as a problem for East India Company during later times, and you will see the amendments which were made at a later stage. Now, there had been Pitt's India Act 1784 में आया. Now, the company's territories were termed as British possession for the first time. This is an important provision. Exam में it can be asked directly कि which was the act in which the company's territories were termed as British possession for the first time. So, it was the Pitt's India Act of 1784. Now, there was a dual system of control. Firstly, there was a board of control. Secondly, there was, now in board of control what was there was ki 6 members were there. Now these were headed by the Secretary of State, and this Secretary of State was directly appointed by the Crown. The board of control managed the political and the administrative affairs, whereas East India Company there was a court of director who undertook the commercial function. So the important point to note here is board of control managed the political as well as administrative affairs of the company, whereas the court of directors were responsible for the commercial functions. Now the presidency of Bombay and Madras were made subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. Now at a later stage you will see that these Bombay and Madras presidencies were made independent, and the control of Bengal over them was completely abolished. Now 1786 Cornwallis came with a view of consolidating British power in India, and that is why certain amendments were made in 1786. Now Cornwallis gave him the power that allowed him to override the council's decision. So the Governor General became all powerful during this time. Also, it is worth noting here that in 1793 Cornwallis introduced permanent settlement in Bengal. Now there was a sunset clause in this. This is an important part. You have to know that sunset clause, sunlight likha hai maine, I'm sorry, sunset clause was there. The clause was mainly basically that if the zamindars failed to pay the rent to the British government till the evening, their rights over the land, the hereditary rights over the land to control or pay the rent would have been abolished. So this was the sunset clause. Now Charter Act of 1793, it renewed companies' privileges for 20 years to trade in India, although you will see at a later stage that slowly these privileges were completely confiscated because the British merchants who were operating, the British manufacturers who were operating in Britain after the Industrial Revolution in Britain, they were highly pressurizing the British Parliament to end the control of East India Company and to set open Indian market for their product also. So you'll see at a later stage that East India Company monopoly over India that ended slowly. Now in 1793 the company privileges were renewed for 20 years. मतलब 1793 से 1813 तक इसको renew कर दिया. Now East India Company to pay 5 lakh pound per year to the government of Britain. Senior officers of the East India Company were debarred from leaving India without permission. Revenue administration was separated from the judicial function. Mal adalats subsequently disappeared. So this happened in the Act of 1793. Now then comes the Charter Act of 1813. Now company monopoly over Indian trade ended. I have already told you 1793 में an extension of 20 years was given, but 1813 में the company monopoly East India company monopoly over Indian trade it ended, but East India Company retained the trade with China जो कि टी के लिए होता था. So the tea trade with China was continued to be practiced, else than this tea trade all the trade benefits were abolished. Company shareholders were promised 10.5% dividend on their revenue. Powers of the board of control was enhanced, which controlled the administrative functions. Rupees 1 lakh was allocated for education. This is an important point. If the question asks you about when was the year when 1 lakh rupees was allocated for the purpose of education, तो वो 1813 के एक्ट में था. But this 1 lakh was seldom given. It was never given. Only this allocation was made. Also the Christian missionaries were allowed. Now then comes the Charter Act of 1833. Now the foremost thing to remember here is Governor General of Bengal was made Governor General of India, and the first Governor General of India was Lord William Bentinck. Okay, and Bentinck is also known was for abolition of sati. ठीक है, and the the program against Sati was launched by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. It was the efforts of Raja Ram Mohan Roy that Sati was abolished by William Bentinck. So I hope this one is revised. Now, the company monopoly over China ended. As I have already told you, 1813 May there was extension given to the company for continuing the trade with China regarding tea. But this provision was ended by the Act of 1833 as the company monopoly over China trade ended. Also, 1833 Act ended all restriction on European immigration and acquisition of property in India. Nextly, financial, legislative and administrative centralization was made in 1833. Madras and Bombay was brought under Bengal. Governor General power to superintend, control, direct all the civil and military affairs. So the elements of centralization, it began in the year 1833. A law member was added to the Governor General Council, and the first law member was Macaulay. Now, Indian laws to be consolidated and codified, and ultimately in the year 1860, civil law and CRPC, these both laws were enacted in the year 1860. Now, it was promised to improve the condition of slaves. About the abolishing, but indirectly it was mentioned that the trade of slave was to be abolished. Ultimately, this was abolished in the year 1843. The trades of slave was abolished in the year 1843. Now, there was Charter Act of 1853. Company continued possessing territories unless Parliament provided. The court of directors' strength was reduced to 18. Now, what would happen is, I have already told you, 1784 के Pitts Act के बाद there was a board of director and board of control. Now, this board of control was to get all powerful, and board of director को धीरे धीरे वो abolish करने वाले थे. Now, 1853 के act के बाद their strength started reducing. Services, the civil services were thrown open to the competitive exams. If there is a question in exam, that then open examination for conducting the civil services, this provision was provided in which act? So the answer will be the Charter Act of 1853. The law member was made a full-time member of the Governor General Council. Law member ka provision was mentioned in the Act of 1833. Local representation was introduced in Indian legislature, that is Indian Legislative Council. So, if a question will be asked that कि local representation first time introduce कब हुआ था, तो the answer will be Indian Legislative Council में local representation introduce हुआ था in the year 1853. Now, portfolio system was introduced by Canning, which laid the foundation of cabinet government in India. Now, portfolio system is related to Canning, and Canning was the first viceroy. ठीक है, गवर्नर जनरल ऑफ इंडिया को बना दिया गया था वाइसरॉय. ओके, इट हैपेंड इन द ईयर 1858. इट वाज द सेंट्रल गुड गवर्नमेंट एक्ट. नाउ, इंडियन काउंसिल एक्ट्स ऑफ 1892. दिस एक्ट, the amendments were made in response to the request which was made by the Indian National Congress. Generally, moderate leaders favor some kind of constitutional reforms. So this act was a result of those requests that were made by the Indian National Congress. It expanded the legislative council. Secondly, the elements of indirect elections were there. So if a question will be there कि पहली बार indirect elections were mentioned in which act? तो Act of 1892. Legislature could express views on financial statement. Now, Indian Council Acts, also known as Morley-Minto reforms. So, it was the first attempt to bring popular representation. First time Indian was included in the Governor General Executive Council, and the name of the first Indian was Satyendra Prasad Sinha. This is worth to be noted. आपको ये तो पता होगा कि Muslims were given separate electorate, but other than that, Council Acts of 1909 is important for the inclusion of first Indian in the Governor General Executive Council. Also, it increased the member of Provincial Executive Council and separate electorate from Muslims. This is the most important point and the most easier one also. Then comes the Government of India Act of the year 1919. It was also known as Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. Now, Indian Legislative Council replaced by a bicameral legislature. Now, communal electorate, the electorate which was earlier given to Muslims only, it was expanded to Sikh, Christian and Anglo-Indians. It is worth noting that women's को 1919 में नहीं मिला था. Women's got a voting right in electorate में include किया गया था इनको in the Act of 1935. So it is worth noting here that Sikh, Christian and Anglo-Indians को communal electorate मिला था in the year 1919. Diarchy was introduced at provincial level, and first time separate budget for provinces and center was made. So these were some of the important provisions. Now here comes the Government of India Act of 1935. Now this act basically is also known as the blueprint of Indian Constitution. It provided for all India Federation. Diarchy was introduced at the center, whereas provinces में the diarchy was abolished. याद रखना, provinces में diarchy was given in the Act of 1919, whereas 1935 में diarchy at center हुआ and provinces में this was abolished. 3 list that we see, federal, provincial and concurrent list was there. तीनों list जो थी ये भी 1935 के Act से it was introduced. That residuary list की power rested with the Governor General. Now you have to tell me in the comments box that the 3 lists which are mentioned in our constitution is mentioned in which schedule of the Indian Constitution. ठीक है, you have to tell me this in the comment section. देखते हैं आपने कितना polity revise किया. Now extended franchise to 10%. The franchise was extended to 10%. It abolished the Indian Council of Secretary of States. Now RBI, that is Federal Court, was established in the year 1937. The idea of separate electorate and weightage, it was extended. Bicameral legislature was introduced. Now this is a really important fact. ठीक है, also इस 1935 के एक्ट में Burma was separated from India. This you also need to know. Other than that, you need to know bicameral legislature कौन से 6 regions में दिया गया था. It was Madras, Bombay, UP, Bihar, Assam and Bengal. मोस्टली नोट डाउन, एक सदर्न स्टेट था हमारा मद्रास का, ठीक है, दूसरा वेस्टर्न स्टेट था बॉम्बे का, एंड देन यूपी, बिहार, असम, बंगाल, ये हमारे नॉर्थ इंडिया के हो गए. इसमें नॉर्थ ईस्ट का एक हो गया एंड देन बाकी नॉर्थ इंडिया. तो ऐसे यू वुड ईजिली रिमेंबर दिस 4. अभी जैसे हमने 4 स्टेट्स को रखा नॉर्थ इंडिया में, कौन कौन से हो गए, यूपी, बिहार लाइन से, एंड देन बंगाल, एंड एक हमारा नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न था असम. एक हमने याद किया था सदर्न है हमारे पास, कौन सा, तो मद्रास, एंड देन वन वॉज ऑफ वेस्टर्न इंडिया विच वॉज बॉम्बे. एंड नाउ यू हैव टू टेल मी इन द कमेंट सेक्शन, अगर आपने ये सीरीज एंड अपने स्पेक्ट्रम फॉलो की है तो यू हैव टू टेल मी इन द कमेंट बॉक्स दैट बॉम्बे के पहले बॉम्बे वॉज द हेडक्वार्टर ऑफ द वेस्टर्न प्रेसिडेंसी. प्रायर टू बॉम्बे व्हाट वॉज द सेंटर और द हेडक्वार्टर ऑफ द वेस्टर्न प्रेसिडेंसी. Now let's move to the next topic, that is evolution of civil services. Now सबसे पहले the father of civil services is known as Cornwallis. Now he increased the salary of civil servants. He debarred them from taking bribes. Now promotion through seniority. This provision was also made by Cornwallis. Now next is Lord Wellesley. He established in 1800 Fort Williams. Fort Williams was generally firstly used as a training center. It was a training center for civil services officers. And बाद में this Fort Williams in Calcutta, it became the headquarter of the Eastern Presidency. ये भी आप ध्यान रखना. 1863 में सत्येंद्र नाथ टैगोर, he became the first Indian to qualify the Indian civil services. Now statutory civil services, it was introduced by Lytton in the years 1878. This is really important क्योंकि ये पूछा जा सकता है. Lord Lytton से related one more fact is there, that Vernacular Press Act, it was also introduced in the year 1878, and this Vernacular Press Act was abolished in the year 1881 by Lord Ripon. आई होप कि आपने पढ़ा होगा एंड रिवीजन आपका हो गया होगा. because I'm trying to link things so that you get maximum benefit out of this. Now, what was statutory civil services? That 1/6 post was to be filled by the Indians of higher families. This was a provision, one of the provision in the statutory civil services. Now, I am mentioning here two committees or commissions which were related to civil services. These types of questions are often asked in the exam. Atkinson and Lee Commission, these were related to the civil services. Now, let us move to the evolution of police system in India. So, this basic performer of police system in India continued from the time of Mughal era. Now, Mughal era mein there were three main officials. One were Faujdars, Amils and then Kotwals. The Faujdar were responsible for law and order, Amils were responsible for revenue and Kotwal were responsible for law and order in cities. So basically आप इसको ऐसे याद, दिस इज़ रियली इंपॉर्टेंट, ये पूछा जा सकता है अगर एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव पार्ट से कोई क्वेश्चन आया तो. फौजदार वे आर रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर लॉ एंड ऑर्डर, आमिल्स वे आर रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर रेवेन्यू एंड कोतवाल्स वे आर रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर लॉ एंड ऑर्डर इन दी सिटीज़. Now, dual control was there. Zamindar expected to control Thanedar for controlling the law and order. तो ज़मींदार के पास दे हैड ए ड्यूअल कंट्रोल. सबसे पहला तो रेंट कलेक्शन का था एंड दूसरा लॉ एंड ऑर्डर को मेंटेन करने का था थ्रू थानेदार्स. नाउ 1770 में क्या हुआ? आफ्टर द एडवेंट ऑफ ब्रिटिश, फौजदार एंड आमिल दिस सिस्टम वाज अबॉलिश्ड. अब नाउ इसको ध्यान में रख लेना, हमने यहाँ पे देखा था फौजदार वॉज टू कंट्रोल द लॉ एंड ऑर्डर एंड आमिल वॉज देयर फॉर रेवेन्यू. तो इनको अबॉलिश कर दिया गया एंड इनको अबॉलिश करने के बाद ही तो द राइट्स वुड हैव बीन गिवन टू द ज़मींदार्स ऑफ दैट एरिया, है ना. नाउ 1774 में हेस्टिंग्स केम टू पावर एंड ही रीस्टोर्ड द एजेंसी ऑफ फौजदार. नाउ दिस क्वेश्चन मैंने कम्युनिटी पोस्ट पे भी आई हैव पोस्टेड and lot of people have answered it correctly. So if you are not following that community post on my channel, so you are greatly missing on some of the most important question. Around 500, no not 500, around 300 plus question I have already posted. So whenever you get time, you just go and solve those question. उनके साथ मैंने उनका explanation भी दिया है. It would be greatly helpful to you. History, geography, current affairs, all of the things I am covering in that. So you can go solve those questions. They are highly beneficial. And trust me on this, these questions I have brought in from various previous year questions of the exams. These questions are helpful. You can go and solve them for the purpose of revision. Now, 1775 में फौजदार थानास were established in major towns. Then 1791 में here comes Cornwallis and he organized the police force, modernized the old Thana system under Indian Daroga. SP, the institution of SP was there for each city and relieved the zamindars of their police duties. So, if a question would come that who among the following viceroy or the governor general abolished or relieved zamindars of their police duty, so the answer would be Cornwallis. Now 1808 में Mayo appointed SP for each division helped by spies and the spies were known as goyendars. Okay, Mayo is also known to conduct census. First census was conducted in the year 1872 and at later stage 1881 से regular census was conducted. Later, at a later stage, Bentinck abolished the office of Superintendent of Police. 1902 में पुलिस कमीशन recommended the establishment of CID and Intelligence Bureau at the center. Now, the evolution of military देख लेते हैं. हेस्टिंग्स में सॉरी ये मिलिट्री नहीं होगा, यहाँ पे जुडिशियरी होगा. पार्डन मी फॉर दिस मिस्टेक. Now, Hastings, he established Diwani Adalat for civil dispute under collector and Hindu plus Muslim appeal to the Sadar Diwani Adalat. Now, Sadar Diwani Adalat was established for the civil disputes whereas Faujdari Adalat was there for the criminal cases under collected. Now, Muslim law was there and Qazis and Muftis' help was taken to decide on the matters of Muslim law. Now, when Cornwallis came, district Faujdari court was abolished and circuit court were established at 4 places: Calcutta, Dhaka, Murshidabad and Patna. Okay, the district Fauzdari court was abolished by Cornwallis and circuit court were established in Calcutta, Dhaka, Murshidabad and Patna. And Southern Nizamat Adalat was shifted to Calcutta under the Governor General. Now there was Cornwallis court under which certain provisions were made. सबसे पहले तो separation of revenue and justice administration was there. European subjects brought under the jurisdiction of the Indian courts and the sovereignty of law was established by the Cornwallis Code. Then there came Bentinck, the four circuit courts that were established in Patna, Calcutta, Dhaka and Murshidabad. These were abolished. Sadar Diwani and Sadar Nizamat Sadar Nizamat Adalat was established at Allahabad. Now Law Commission was set up under Macaulay. 1835 के अराउंड हुआ था ये. Now who is known as the father of local self government? तो Lord Ripon. ठीक है. एंड लॉर्ड रिपन के टाइम में फैक्ट्रीज एक्ट ऑफ 1881 आया था. दिस इज इम्पॉर्टेंट एज इट रेगुलेटेड वर्किंग आवर फॉर वुमेन. ये ध्यान रखना, मेंस के लिए नहीं था ये. दिस फैक्ट्रीज एक्ट ऑफ 1881 it basically focused on the working hour of children and women. Now let us now see the economic impact of the British rule in India. सबसे पहले the economic drain theory, which is the most important thing here. It was given by Dada Bhai Naroji. ठीक है. R.C. Dutt. These two were the main economists who gave the economic drain theory. Now the economic impact of British rule, what was that? सबसे पहले तो there was deindustrialization, that is ruin of artisan and handicrafts industries, impoverishment of peasantry, because they were suppressed by the high rent which they needed to pay, and the operation by zamindari led to the impoverishment of peasantry. Now emergence of new land relation, ruin of old zamindars and new zamindar rose, which were largely focused on revenue collection. Now commercialization of agriculture was there. Now when there was industrial revolution in Britain, they were in needs of raw materials. So India became a hub of commercial crops such as cotton, indigo, plantation workers such as rubber, tea, coffee. These was cultivated and it led to the commercialization of agriculture. Railway lines was also established. ठीक है. 1853 में first railway was there. ठीक है. It was first railway came into force. What was the purpose of railway? It was not to serve the public in general. It was to export the raw materials from remote parts of the countries to the ports, and then it ultimately went to the British Empire. Now economic drain was there. I've already told you about the economic drain. Now famine and poverty, we have already seen 1943 में there was a major famine which occurred in Bengal, and this was a result of the natural forces, and then the separation process, not separation, but what is that exact word, the diversion of food to the World War II soldiers. Now let us now see the development of Indian press. सबसे पहले the first newspaper, which was known as Bengal Gazette, it was brought in by James August Hickey in the year 1780. Now which were the earlier regulations that were made on press? सबसे पहला Censorship of Press Act 1799 by Wellesley. ठीक है. It came under Wellesley. Later stage में it was relaxed under Hastings. ठीक है. Lord Wellesley came also with an administrative policy which was known as policy of subsidiary alliance. This you have to remember. Now Press Act of 1835, it was also known as Metcalfe Act. Now Metcalfe was also known as liberator of Indian press. Under this Press Act of 1835, relaxations were given to the vernacular press of India. Now some of the indigenous newspaper which is more very important for the examination point of view. The Hindu was started by G. Subramania Iyer. Bengali was started by Surendranath Banerjee. Voice of India was started by Dada Bhai Naroji. Amrit Bazar Patrika was started by Shishir Kumar Ghosh. Now Annie Besant here is also very important. Let me tell you the names of the newspaper by Annie Besant. सबसे पहले तो Commonweal. The second one is I'm just forgetting the name of the second paper. Searchlight was there, I think. I'll tell you that the name is not striking. Just a second, I'll tell you. Now, the Indian Mirror was started by N.N. Sen. Now, B.G. Tilak is known for his two newspapers. First one was Kesari. This was in Marathi language. The second was Maharata. It was in English language. Okay? This is the most important newspaper. Also, Ram Mohan Roy, Raja Ram Mohan Roy se related. Precepts of Jesus. This was a book. And the second one was Gift to Monotheist. Okay, these two books are regarding Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Second one, Sudharak. It was brought in by Gopal Krishna Gokhale. There was a Comrade newspaper journal which was brought in by Jinnah. The book India Divided. It was by Rajendra Prasad. Now, next is Hindustan Advocate. It was brought in by J.P. Verma. Now, next is Vernacular Press Act. I've already told you this was brought in by Lord Lytton and it was repealed by Ripon. Now, yes, the name of two newspaper of Annie Besant मेरे को याद आ गया. पहला one तो Commonweal I've told you. The second one was New India. Okay. This Vernacular Press Act was also known as Gagging Act. Now, the development of education under company rule. Calcutta Madrasa was established by Warren Hastings. Then Sanskrit College was established by Jonathan Duncan. Then came the Fort William College. It was established by Lord Wellesley to train the civil servants. The Charter Act of 1813 में 1 lakh rupees sanction was made to the education and Raja Ram Mohan Roy के efforts से Calcutta College was started. Then the very famous Orientalist Anglicist controversy was there. Now you need to know some basic information about the Anglicist and Orientalist. Now Anglicist, money spent only on modern studies. They preferred English only as the language in which the people needed to be educated. Whereas Orientalists such as Warren Hastings, he was one of the Orientalists. Okay. Now he propagated modern education for jobs. Modern education मतलब English as a means of education for modern jobs, but it also expanded the traditional knowledge too. He was the Warren Hastings was also very profound in Sanskrit and languages such as Persian. So the Orientalists preferred English, a mixture of English plus vernacular languages for the purpose of educating people. Now, Lord Macaulay Minutes of 1835, what were the main highlights of this? This was the favor of an Anglicist, मतलब कि English education में it propagated downward filtration theory. Now, what is downward filtration theory? This is very important term. ये एग्जाम्स में पूछा जा सकता है. सबसे पहले तो it was related to education, क्योंकि हम अभी education के बारे में पढ़ रहे हैं, तो obviously it would have been related to this only. Now, what was its purpose? Now, downward filtration theory basically said that we need to educate a selected few people, जिनको उस टाइम पे बोलते थे अपर मिडिल क्लास या एडुकेटेड मिडिल क्लास वुड बी अ राइट वर्ड है. We need to educate some educated middle class who in turn were responsible to spread education to the lower sections of society. समझ में आना. डाउनवर्ड फिल्ट्रेशन, डाउनवर्ड मतलब नीचे के साइड. फॉर एन इंस्टेंस मिडिल क्लास पीपल को हमने एडुकेट किया एंड दीज वेयर इन टर्न रिस्पॉन्सिबल टू इम्पार्ट एडुकेशन टू द लोअर स्ट्रेटा ऑफ द सोसाइटी और द कॉमन पीपल. दिस वॉज द डाउनवर्ड फिल्ट्रेशन थ्योरी. आई होप यू अंडरस्टूड दिस. नाउ देन देयर वाज फेमस वुड्स डिस्पैच. It is known as Magna Carta of India of English education. Now you have to tell me in the comments कमेंट सेक्शन मैग्ना कार्टा फॉर द ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी रिगार्डिंग ट्रेड किस चीज़ को बोला गया था, ठीक है। इट वॉज अ फरमान विच वॉज प्रोपाउंडेड इन दी 1717। चलो इतना मैंने बता दिया। यू हैव टू टेल मी द रूलर हु गेव दिस फरमान। दिस फरमान वॉज नोन एज द मैग्ना कार्टा फॉर ट्रेड फॉर द ब्रिटिश ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी। Now, Witt's dispatch was considered as a Magna Carta of English education. It asked the government of India to assume the responsibility of education. It rejected the downward filtration theory, मतलब कि the educated middle class are not responsible to impart education. So the government of India has to assume responsibility of education. What was the hierarchy that was propounded in the Wood's dispatch? Vernacular primary school. Above that, there was Anglo Vernacular High School, then affiliated universities in presidency. This was the hierarchy. It recommended English as a medium in higher studies plus vernacular language at school. Now, if a question would be there in on the Woods Commission, Woods dispatch, तो एक स्टेटमेंट होगा कि इट प्रोपाउंडेड इंग्लिश एज अ लैंग्वेज, तो वो गलत हो जाएगा क्योंकि इंग्लिश एज वेल एज वर्नाकुलर लैंग्वेजेस वॉज अ सोर्स विच वॉज सजेस्टेड. Now, female and vocational education में it also female and vocational education it advocated. Now, let us see the development. 1857 में University of Calcutta, Bombay and Madras was established. 1849 में Bethune College by J.E.D. Bethune was established. It mainly focused on girl education. Agriculture Institute at Pursa in Bihar and English Institute at Roorkee was established. I'm sorry if my voice is a little bit low because continuously बोलने पे ना समझाने पे the energy levels get a bit down and I don't have water with me, so pardon me for my lower voice. Now प्लीज़ टेल मी इन द कमेंट सेक्शन आपको पूरी सीरीज़ कैसे लगी. इट फील्स वेरी मोटिवेटिंग टू रीड योर कमेंट्स एंड इट कीप्स मी मोटिवेटिंग टू प्रोवाइड यू विथ मोर सच कंटेंट्स. सो काइंडली जस्ट ड्रॉप योर कमेंट्स एंड लेट मी नो एनी ऑफ द सजेशंस और जस्ट टेल मी हाउ दिस होल सीरीज वेंट फॉर यू. नाउ हंटर कमीशन वॉज देयर. दिस इज़ आवर लास्ट टॉपिक, इसलिए मैंने थोड़ी अपनी बात करती. तो हंटर कमीशन कन्फाइंड इटसेल्फ टू द प्राइमरी एंड सेकेंडरी एजुकेशन. It transferred control to the newly set up district and municipal board. ठीक है, the responsibility of education was transferred to the newly set up district and municipal board. Now, the Sadler, Hartog and Sargent plan, these were related to the education. So now Sadler Commission was established in the year 1917 and it was related to the University of Calcutta. Now, with this we have ended this whole series. Do like this video. अगर वीडियो अच्छी लगी तो कमेंट सेक्शन में बताना एंड जस्ट स्टे ट्यून्ड फॉर मोर कंटेंट. अगर कुछ कंटेंट चाहिए तो डू मेंशन इन द कमेंट बॉक्स. I'll just provide that content to you. Okay, thank you for watching.